Hello everyone and happy Friday. I'm Nitsuhone, and each and every week I bring you guys another MTG Top 10 list. This week we're looking at the top 10 zero-power creatures in Magic's history. I was inspired to make this list because of the fact that one of the best zero-power creatures ever, spoiler alert, this card is on the list, was reprinted in Aether Revolt, not only as a typical card, Ornithopter that is, but also as an invention. That made me want to do some research into the best performing zero-power creatures in Magic's history. The cards in this list are arranged in order of how well these cards did in Premier level tournament play, with Grand Prix and Pro Tour top 8s being the biggest factor. Cards receive points depending on how many Grand Prix or Pro Tour top 8s they received, with the Pro Tour top 8 worth twice as much as a Grand Prix top 8. I also consider annual Vintage Championship tournaments, which are not technically Pro Tours, to be Pro Tours for the sake of this list, so that cards can receive some credit for good performances in Vintage. Additionally, for this list, I chose to exclude a few cards that appear on Gatherer when you search for creatures with zero power, because these creatures don't really have zero power. This includes creatures that come into play with +1/+1 counters on them, like Arcbound Ravager and friends, and creatures with power and toughness equal to something. All the creatures on this list enter the battlefield actually having zero power, and that's an important qualifier. Now, before we get started on this list, post your guess for what will come in at number 1 in the comments below, and we'll see if you get it right. Alright, let's see what comes in at number 10. At number 10, with 28 points, we have Izzet Staticaster. Staticaster is a bit strange in terms of these lists, as it is rare for a card to make the list that didn't manage to get any points at all in Standard, and Izzet Staticaster did not. However, it has played enough today in Modern and Legacy, and has even seen play in Vintage, that it has managed to put together a pretty solid resume. Primarily a sideboard card in these formats, it is often brought in against people playing token generators like Lingering Souls. It is also very good against Elf decks, Fairy decks, Death and Taxes, Soul Sisters, and any other deck running a lot of 1 toughness creatures. The fact that it has both haste and flash is pretty amazing, as you can surprise your opponent with a Staticaster and completely reshape their board even while they are attacking. Most decks that happen to have blue and red in them have Izzet Staticaster somewhere in the 75 in Modern. This includes Jeskai and Grixis Control, Blue Moon, Delver, and Splinter Twin before that deck got banned. Additionally, the Staticaster actually did see some mainboard play in another deck that got banned out of existence, Birthing Pod, where it was a good one-of to be able to tutor up when your opponent has X1s in play. In Legacy, it is in the sideboard of Delver decks, Miracles, and Grixis decks, and in Vintage, it also sees play in Delver decks. Izzet Staticaster picked up a Grand Prix top 8 as recently as November of 2016, so it probably isn't quite done yet, and it may manage to climb higher up on this list. At number 9, we have a zero-power creature who is actually aggressive, more or less, on his own, though it does need some help from lands, Stepplinks. While a 0/1 in a world of fetch lands, it is not difficult to make him a 4/5 when he is attacking most turns. He saw play immediately in Standard, where he appeared in a red-white deck that was focused on maximizing landfall triggers for the Lynx and other creatures with landfall. But the Lynx was good enough to see play elsewhere too. In Extended, he slid right into the Zoo and White Weenie decks, and has managed to pick up 4 of his 9 Pro Tour top 8s in the now defunct Extended format. Once Extended was eliminated and Modern emerged, the Lynx continued to perform well, appearing in Zoo decks and Jeskai midrange decks. He stopped seeing play in Modern for a long period of time though, between about 2012 and 2016, but he has just recently emerged as one of the creatures that is run in the currently Tier 1 Death Shadow Zoo deck, and as a result is experiencing a resurgence. Stepplinks even saw play in Legacy for a time in a Legacy version of the Zoo deck, but he hasn't picked up a top 8 there since 2011. However, it will continue to improve on its resume as long as Death Shadow Zoo continues to be a good deck in Modern, which I think is for the foreseeable future. At number 8, we have Fin Raptor. After looking at a couple of cards that have seen play and continue to see play in multiple formats, we turned to the only card on this particular list that only saw play in Standard, but it was enough of an all-star there to put up a pretty good resume, and that's, of course, Fin Raptor. Similar to the Lynx, Fin Raptor comes into play with 0 power, but with a little help, in this case, just playing some more creatures, the Raptor becomes a force to be reckoned with in the air. The Raptor, which came out in Return to Ravnica block, never saw any play in any format until Theros came out. Theros Standard was pretty much dominated by various types of Devotion decks, and Fin Raptor found a home in Mono Blue Devotion. As a 1-drop, the Raptor provided an early boost to Blue Devotion, and the Raptor only got bigger as the game went on, making the Raptor a great card for the deck. The Raptor never saw play in any other deck, though, and has never seen play anywhere outside of Standard, and it seems unlikely that it will, so it seems probable that Stepplinks and Izzet Staticaster, who are still seeing play in non-rotating formats, will eventually get past the Raptor. At number 7, we have Signal Pest, another creature with 0 power who you find yourself swinging with. The Pest was great because he pumped your whole team when he swung, and he was difficult to block because only creatures with flying or reach can block him, and this meant you could get the Battle Cry effect every turn. He was commonly played in both block and standard alongside Tempered Steel, another card that pushes you into an aggressive artifact creature-based deck, and it also made sure that the Pest had 2 power that was difficult to block, making him even better. However, where the Signal Pest has found its most success is in modern affinity decks, where it provides another aggressive artifact creature that can pump the whole team. What's more, in modern, Signal Pest can be equipped with Cranial Plating, not something you usually want to be facing down on an evasive creature, and you can also put Arcbound Ravager tokens on him, another thing you don't really want to be dealing with. Signal Pest will continue to be good as long as Affinity is, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. At number 6, we have the card that inspired this list in the first place, and that's Ornithopter. Ornithopter on its own is actually a pretty terrible card. One way we can know this is that it was actually printed very early on in Magic's history, but it never saw any competitive play for about a decade. Then, it was reprinted in Mirrodin block, at the same time that cards like the aforementioned Cranial Plating and Arcbound Ravager were printed, and suddenly a 0-mana artifact creature with evasion was great because it counted towards your affinity for artifacts, towards your Cranial Plating power, and you could put Ravager +1/+1 counters on it, and that was a pretty big deal. First, the Affinity deck pretty much broke block in Standard, then Extended, leading eventually to the artifact lands being banned to try to power down the deck. This slowed it down for a little bit, but once Modern emerged as a format, Affinity came around again, and Ornithopter has found most of its success in some version of Affinity in Modern, where it will continue to find success. This is likely the reason they decided to have Ornithopter appear as an invention, since people wanting to pimp out their Affinity decks will definitely want to get their hands on this new Ornithopter. At number 5, we have another card from very early in Magic's history, Wall of Roots. Unlike Ornithopter, though, Wall of Roots saw play pretty quickly after it was initially printed in Mirage. As a 2-mana 0/5, it provided a great blocker, but it could also be used to help ramp you. It originally saw play in lots of decks running green who had an interest in ramping, including reanimation decks. In Extended, it provided more or less the same role, but by 2001, it was pretty much done putting up top 8s. However, it was reprinted in Time Spiral block as a time-shifted card, and it reemerged in Standard and Ramp decks. And thanks to it also being time-shifted, it is legal in Modern, where it was a crucial part of the Birthing Pod deck, allowing you to power out Birthing Pod more quickly, and helping you assemble your combo. After Birthing Pod got the Banhammer, the Wall has continued to see play in similar decks that run Court of Calling in place of the Pod, and Wall of Roots is good there too, because it can both add mana to your mana pool and be tapped for the Convoke cost. At number 4, we have a card that is somewhat similar to Wall of Roots, a 2-drop with Defender who helps you ramp, and that's Sylvan Caryatid. Caryatid also brings hexproof to the table, which is actually a pretty big deal, since it meant that it would be very difficult for you to lose your mana creature. The Caryatid saw a lot of play first in Theros block Constructed, where it completely dominated Pro Tour Journey into Nyx, appearing in 7 of the top 8 deck lists, indicating that it was one of the best cards you could be playing in the entire block. While Caryatid was not quite as dominant in Standard, in that it would never put up quite so many top 8s at a single event, it still put together an impressive resume, appearing in a variety of decks. Much like Wall of Roots, it basically appeared in basically any deck with green in it that wasn't trying to be solely aggressive. This included Devotion to Green, Devotion to Gruul, and Abzan decks, among others. The Caryatid even managed to pick up a single Modern Grand Prix top 8 in 2014 in a Jeskai Ascendancy deck, where it could be untapped with Jeskai Ascendancy and then tapped for mana again. However, since then it hasn't seen any play, and while it has some potential to see more play in Modern, since it already has, it doesn't seem that it will be a dominant card there like it was in Standard or in Block. At number 3, we find our third consecutive green mana creature, Nobu Hierarch, who has an impressive 111 points, but there are still 2 cards with even more. Anyway, Hierarch is one of the best mana creatures ever printed, between her ability to add 3 different colors and having Exalted. This meant that the Hierarch could even sometimes swing as a 1/2, though the majority of the time you're using the Hierarch's mana ability and the Exalted is helping out your other creatures. But that's a great bonus to have tacked onto a Mana Dork. A multi-format all-star because it is so good, Nobu Hierarch is seen play in every format that isn't Vintage, a pretty good sign of a card's power. While it was in Standard, it was basically just used as a great mana-fixing creature with the bonus of Exalted and didn't do anything too interesting, appearing in a variety of decks including Bant, Zoo, and Naya, all 3 color decks that would like to have Nobu Hierarch. Nobu Hierarch is perhaps most famous for its performance in Modern, where it is used in a variety of decks, including those who just want to ramp, but probably most notoriously used in the Tier 1 Infect deck, where it is great because of its ability to both help you have more mana for your pump spells, and it provides an additional power for your creature with Infect when it's attacking. In Legacy, it is pretty much the best mana dork in the format, and as a result, it sees play in a large variety of decks, including a Legacy version of Infect, Maverick, Bant Stoneblade, among others. While Nobu Hierarch may currently be the best mana dork in all of Magic, the card that appears at number 2 used to have that crown, and while it managed to put together an impressive enough resume that, for now, it is holding off Nobu Hierarch. And that card is Birds of Paradise, which, yes, means that this is our 4th green mana creature in a row, but I can tell you the number 1 card in this list is not a mana creature. Anyway, Birds of Paradise, while currently outclassed by Nobu Hierarch and as a result seeing less play, has an extremely long history in the game, being printed back in Alpha, and its reign as the best mana dork in Magic was long-lasting, about a decade and a half, allowing it to put up crazy numbers. It is also helped by the fact that it was reprinted in all the core sets between 7th edition and Magic 2012, and also in Ravnica, giving it a lot of chances to impact Standard. If we went through and listed all of the different decks that Birds of Paradise has gotten a top 8 in, this entire video would be about the same length, but solely dedicated to Birds of Paradise. Since basically any green deck played it for a long time, we don't really have time to go through all of them, so let's just leave it at saying that it has been good enough to see play in every format that isn't Vintage and has appeared in a lot of different green decks because of the fact that it was the best mana dork there was for a very long period of time. So now let's move on to number 1. At number 1, we have Spellskite, just barely beating out Birds of Paradise and breaking up the string of green mana creatures. This is actually Spellskite's second appearance on an MTG Top 10, and second appearance as the number 1 card on a list, where it also appeared on my Top 10 Horrors list. Spellskite is a great card because it allows you to redirect your opponent's spells to Spellskite for free. It saw play in Standard extensively because of its ability to disrupt anything the opponent was trying to do, and was especially good against Standard Infect decks as they tried to pump their creatures as much as possible, while also not actually pressuring your life total at all because all of their creatures had Infect. This meant that you could go pretty low on life against Infect using Spellskite's ability and not be too worried about it. In Modern, it serves the same role as a key card against Infect. Many decks even just mainboard Spellskite because of its utility. It also blanks commonly played cards like Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix, and when Splinter Twin was around, it was pretty great against them too. It was also great in Twin decks since the Spellskite could redirect a removal spell targeting one of your combo pieces. Spellskite is one of the most widely sideboarded cards in all of Modern because it is so good against a large variety of decks, and as a result it managed to snag the number 1 spot in this list, and it should continue to gain more points more than Birds of Paradise as it continues to see play. That does it for this week's MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button. If you have any questions, suggestions, or want to say anything else about this video, post them in the comments below. And if you want to make sure you catch MTG Top 10 each and every week along with other Magic the Gathering content, don't forget to subscribe. Also, my content is sponsored in part by 5colorcombo.com. Take a minute to check out their website and you'll find all sorts of great Magic stuff, including content from creators like myself, a great app for practicing drafting, and a store. And in that store, you can use the discount code NEEDSAHONE5 for a 5% discount. So go check it out. Thanks for watching.